Hello and welcome to a chess summary of Week 11 in the Overwatch League, plus the community MVP results from that week as well. The primary highlights from this week were Shanghai jumping into the top 3 after another back-to-back win weekend, Florida Mayhem upsetting the Paris Eternal 3-0, and Dallas Fuel barely losing to the San Francisco Shock in a 3-2 5-map epic. Now, onto the first match of the week, the domination between Atlanta Reign and the Washington Justice. Atlanta won the match 3-0. They first won on Ilios 2-0, then Route 66 4-3, and then Hollywood 3-1. This left Atlanta's record at 4 wins and 2 losses, with a map ratio of +9, and this has left them 5th in the standings at the end of the week. While Washington have suffered, leaving them at 2 wins and 8 losses with a map ratio of -13, and that has left them 19th in the standings at the end of the week. Moving on to the community MVP votes, Edison got the 3 points, with his percentage of 87.5. Hawk got the 2 points, with his percentage of 54.2. And Master got the 1 point, with his percentage of 41.7. For Atlanta's positive, I just put the win has helped buff their map ratio and it has also put them in the top 5. And those are both really good positives for Atlanta, as it puts them in a better position for later this year when map ratio and wins and losses really come into effect and it counts a lot more. And for the negative, I couldn't really find anything. And it's the opposite for Washington. Couldn't find anything for their positive, and for their negative, their map ratio suffers, and they are effectively stuck in the bottom 2 now. It's going to be very hard for them to climb out of 19th, and if they do really bad, they might drop to 20th. Well, that's assuming Boston can actually get a win. Moving on to the close Battle of LA, the Glads won this match 3-2. They first won on Busan, 2-1, then Route 66, 3-2. But then Valiant took Hollywood 2-3, and Hanamura 1-2. But then the Glads stopped the reverse sweep by winning on Ilios 2-0. This has left the Glads record at 3 wins and 3 losses, with a map ratio of -1, and this has left them 10th in the standings at the end of the week. While for the Valiant, this has left them at 2 wins and 5 losses with a map ratio of -6, and this has left them 18th in the standings at the end of the week. Moving on to the community MVP votes, Birdring got the 3 points with his percentage of 75. Space got the 2 points with his percentage of 70.8, and KSP got the 1 point with his percentage of 33.3. For the Gladiators positive, I put the strong win shows the improvement from Birdring and Space in their skill, primarily because, in my opinion, they basically carried this match. They did extremely well while the rest of the Gladiators really underperformed. And that brings me to my negative. Their toxicity after the match and almost getting reverse sweeped had to be their negatives. They were extremely toxic on Twitter after this match for most of their members. I'm pretty sure only Space and Birdring actually didn't do that, calling out the Valiant's team composition that they used, calling it dishonest. A team should never do this. I personally think this was a terrible decision from the Gladiators players. I don't know why they did this. It just shows they are not gracious winners. They are not good winners. They're basically sore winners. You should never do something like this after a match. Instead, they should have just said nothing if they didn't have anything positive to say. It's just stupid. And also, almost getting reverse sweeped is also pretty bad. And for the Valiant's positive, I put they looked really strong in the match. Their whole team looked fairly good, especially KSP again. But the negative, the loss has dropped them to 18th, which is not good because they are now in the bottom 3. Now, moving on to the huge upset between Florida and Paris. Florida took it 3-0. They first won Oasis 2-0, then Rialto 2-1, and then Numbani 5-4. This has left the Florida Mayhem's record at 3 wins and 4 losses, with a map ratio of -2, and this has left them 13th in the standings at the end of the week. While for Paris, this has left them at 5 wins and 4 losses, with a map ratio of +1, and this has left them 8th in the standings at the end of the week. Moving on to the community MVP votes. BQB got the 3 points with his percentage of 68. Gargoyle will get the 2 points with his percentage of 60, and Yaki will get the 1 point because of his percentage of 56. For Florida's positive, it was a huge win over a potential top 5 team. This is going to be huge for the team's motivation and confidence, and they just need to keep this form going and not underestimate anybody like Paris did here. And their first test will be Boston. Some people may think that's not much of a test, but Florida need to prepare for this match because if they act like Paris did in this match, not really preparing for it, they might get upset by Boston. Now for Paris, I couldn't find a positive, and for their negative, I put, did they not prepare or is XE needed to win? Because it seems like they didn't prepare, and it seems like they're not as good without XE. Do they need XE to win? I don't know, but right now it seems that way. Now, moving on to the Boston Uprising versus the Toronto Defiant. Toronto won this toilet bowl 1-3. They first lost on Ilios 2-1, but then they took Dorado 1-3, Icon World 2-3, and Paris 3-4. This has left Boston's record at 1 win and 7 losses, with a map ratio of -16, and this has left them still in 20th in the standings at the end of the week. While for Toronto, this has left them at 4 wins and 5 losses, with a map ratio of -1, and this has left them 12th in the standings at the end of the week, a big boost. Moving on to the community MVP votes for this match. Shawfall got the 3 points with a 68%. Nevix got the 2 points with 56%, and Jerry got the 1 point with 52%. For Boston's positive, I really couldn't think of anything other than they took one map. There's not too many positives for this team anymore. They're losing a lot. It's just plain not good for them anymore. And then negative, they are basically stuck in 20th now. I don't see how they're going to get out of it unless they can pull a random upset out of nowhere. And for Toronto's positive, the win has put them up into the top 12, which is where the play-ins boundary used to be. They might change it because of the schedule changes. But for Toronto's negative, they had their struggles against the worst team in Overwatch League, which is never too good if you're struggling against the bottom team, aka the worst team in the league. Moving on to the 5-map epic between Dallas and San Francisco Shock. San Francisco Shock took this match at 2-3. Dallas won on the first map, Lijiang Tower 2-1, but then the Shock took Rialto 2-3. The Fuel would take Numbani 3-0, but the Shock would win the match by taking Hanamura 0-1, and Busan 1-2, winning the 5-map epic 2-3. This left Dallas's record at 2 wins and 4 losses, with a map ratio of -4, and this has left them 17th in the standings at the end of the week. While for the Shock, this has left them at 4 wins and 2 losses, with a map ratio of +4, and this has left them 6th in the standings at the end of the week. Moving on to the community MVP votes for this match. Moth from the Shock got the 3 points with 56%. Decay got the 2 points with 52%, and Doha got the 1 point with 48%. For Dallas's positive, I just put they looked really strong against one of the best teams in the league. This is all Dallas fans have been hoping for the last few years. A good solid team that can challenge the top teams with really good players. And in my opinion, unlike in the previous years, this year seems different because the players playing this year look extremely good and better than the players they had in previous years. But the negative is they did have the match in the bag at 2-1, but they lost. It never feels good when you're up and you have the chance to win the match, but then it just chokes out of your, well, you just lose grip of it, and that's never too good and never good feeling. For the Shock, they're positive. I put the win has returned them to the top 6. That's always good. That's where the playoffs cutoff was if the playoffs thing remains the same. While for the negative, they clearly struggled throughout this match, so the Shock might not be back at their 2019 championship form, or everyone else has just gotten a lot better. Now moving on to the domination between Chengdu and Guangzhou. Chengdu took this match pretty easily, winning it 3-0. Their first one on Lijiang Tower 2-0, then Rialto 1-0, then finished it off, winning on Hollywood 2-0. This left Chengdu's record at 3 wins and 4 losses, with a map ratio of +1, but they would play again the next day. And Chengdu were left at 3 wins and 4 losses with a map ratio of -5, but they would also play again the next day. Moving on to the community MVP votes. Jinmu got the 3 points, with his percentage of 70.8. Leaf got the 2 points, with his percentage of 66.7. And Aman got the 1 point, with his percentage of 54.2. For Chengdu's positive, this win was a big map ratio boost, and it also really helped their standings with the map ratio boost. And I couldn't find the negative. For Guangzhou, basically the same thing, but opposite again. No positive, and the negative is they were absolutely dominated, and now their map ratio suffers even more, and it's already in a terrible position as well. Now, on to another one-sided match. Shanghai beat Hangzhou 3-0. They first won on Busan 2-1, then Route 66 3-2, then they drew on Nambani 3-3, then Shanghai finished it off by winning on Hanamura 2-1. This left Shanghai's record at 5 wins and 1 loss, with a map ratio of +11, but they would play again the next day, while Hangzhou were left at 3 wins and 3 losses with a map ratio of -2, but they would also play again the next day. Moving on to the community MVP votes. Floater got the 3 points, with his percentage of 79.2. Lip got the 2 points with his percentage of 66.7. And Void got the 1 point with his percentage of 45.8. For Shanghai's positive, this is another big win that boosts their map ratio even further, which is always good, and I couldn't find a negative for them. For the Spark, the only positive I could really find was Rio returned, so now they have their dedicated off-tank player back. But the negative is they got obliterated, and because of that, their map ratio is going to suffer even more. Now, moving on to the third edition of Guangzhou vs Hangzhou this season. Guangzhou won this match 3-1. The first one on Lijiang Tower 2-1, then Dorado 2-1, but then Hangzhou took Eichenwald 1-2, but then Guangzhou would finish off the match by winning on Volskaya 3-2. This left Guangzhou's record at 4 wins and 4 losses, with a map ratio of -3, and this has left them 11th in the standings at the end of the week. While for Hangzhou, this has left them at 3 wins and 4 losses with a map ratio of -4, and this has left them 14th in the standings at the end of the week. Moving on to the community MVP votes. Nero got the 3 points with his percentage of 66.7. Krong got the 2 points with his percentage of 45.8, and Gooseway got the 1 point with his percentage of 37.5. For Guangzhou's positive, I put the win makes them not the worst Chinese team, since they beat Hangzhou and they lost to Chengdu yesterday. But they still look a bit iffy, and that's the negative I chose to put. They don't look exactly perfect, but they also don't look absolutely terrible. For Hangzhou's positive, they still look very competitive up against certain Chinese teams, primarily Guangzhou and Chengdu. But the negative is they are basically the worst Chinese team now because they lost to Guangzhou and Guangzhou got 3-0 by Chengdu the day before this. Moving on to the third edition of Chengdu vs Shanghai. Shanghai won this match 0-3. Their first one on Oasis 0-2, then Dorado 4-5, and then they wrapped it up by winning on Hollywood 2-3. This left Chengdu's record at 3 wins and 5 losses, with a map ratio of -2, and this has left them 16th in the standings. While Shanghai are at 6 wins and 1 loss, with a map ratio of +14, which has put them at a whopping 3rd in the standings. Moving on to the community MVP votes for this match. Ding got the 3 points with his percentage of 54.2. Fearless got the 2 points with his percentage of 41.7. And Lip got the 1 point with his percentage of 37.5. For Chengdu's positive, I put they're not the worst Chinese team because they definitely look better than both Hangzhou and Guangzhou at the moment. But the negative is their map ratio is harmed a lot by this 0-3 loss. And for Shanghai's positive, this win has put them up to 3rd, and this is Fearless's first win, Well, technically, his first win was when Shanghai first won, but this is the first win where Fearless has actually played in the match and the team has won. Now, onto the community MVP voting leaderboards. Carpe is still in first on 24 points. Tied in second, there is Xe and Flutter on 15 points. In fourth is Jinmu on 14 points, while tied in fifth is Decay and Shaw4 on 12 points. Tied in 7th on 11 points, there's Corey, Nero, and Dante. And tied in 10th on 9 points is Hopper, Glister, Lip, Birdring, and Edison. I'll have you guys read the rest of the rankings, and you can pause the video if you do want to read those rankings. Now, onto the Overwatch League standings. Seoul are still in first, and Philadelphia are still in second. Shanghai are up one spot to third, and New York are down one spot to fourth. Atlanta are up one spot to fifth, and the Shock are also up one spot, but to sixth. London are up 2 spots to seventh, and Paris are down 3 spots to eighth. Vancouver are up 1 spot to ninth, and the Glads are up 2 spots to 10th. Guangzhou remain in 11th, and Toronto have gone up 3 spots to 12th. The Mayhem have gone up 4 spots to 13th, while Hangzhou have dropped a whopping 6 spots to 14th. Houston have gone down 1 spot to 15th, while Chengdu remain in 16th. Dallas have gone down 4 spots to 17th, while the Valiant remain in 18th, Justice remains in 19th, and the Uprising remains in 20th. Thank you to everyone who has watched the video, and please subscribe, and thank you to the 27 different people who voted in this week's polls. But in a few of the matches, some people didn't vote for all of them, if people are wondering why the math and the percentages are different in each match.